I keep hearing conflicting arguments about the supposed blue zones where people live to be super old and everybody's healthy there. These different parts of the world where it's like they eat a lot of vegetables and they exercise and they have purpose or whatever. But I keep hearing people say that was debunked, or that they're not real, or that there was a lot of like data fudging going on. And I would like to get to the bottom of this and know what is actually up. So I'm going to look into it. All right, so let's start by looking at the original data or sources, because that's always a good start, right? It's always good to know what people were actually saying. Blue zones. So there's a website, Our Solutions. Blue Zones Health. Live better, longer, trademarked. How is that trademarked? Our Story. Okay, this is not going to be a original source. Let's keep looking. I'm not seeing anything that looks like original. Let's try something else. Publication. Here we go. NIH. Blue zones. Lessons from the world's longest lived. Okay. So Dan Butner is the guy leading this up. So the 5 places around the world where people consistently live to over 100 years old are the blue zones. So Dan and his team of demographers? Not sure. Scientists and anthropologists were able to distill the evidence into these common denominators, 9 commonalities they call the Power 9. They've taken these principles into communities across the United States. These projects have been able to increase the life expectancy, reduce obesity, and make healthy choice the easy choice for millions of Americans. That all sounds very positive. The Danish twin study. What's that? Only about 20% of how long the average person lives is dictated by our genes, whereas the other 80% is dictated by our lifestyle. Mr. Butner here was determined to uncover the specific aspects of lifestyle and environment that led to longevity. So these are the 5 different areas: Loma Linda, California; Nicoya, Costa Rica; Sardinia, Italy; Icaria, Greece; Okinawa, Japan, seen in Figure 1, the 5 blue zones. Once these areas were established, they sent teams of people to identify the lifestyle characteristics that might explain longevity. Okay, but how did they identify these areas in the first place? Let's get into the Power 9. Such a ridiculous thing to publish in a paper. The Power 9. Why is this in a publication? In a scientific journal? Okay, so the 9 things. Move naturally. Pump iron. Run marathons. Oh no, they don't do these things. They live in environments that nudge them into moving without thinking. Growing gardens. Not having mechanical conveniences. Purpose. The reason they wake up in the morning. Downshift. Everybody gets stressed out. These people have routines to shed stress. Take a few moments to remember ancestors. Take a nap. Do happy hour. 80% rule. Harahachibu. So they stop eating when they're 80% full. They don't eat when they're 100% full. They eat their smallest meal in the late afternoon or early evening. And they don't eat anything else for the rest of the day. Plant slant. They eat a lot of beans. They only eat meat on average of 5 times per month, with a very small serving size. Wine at 5. All the blue zone people except Adventists drink alcohol moderately and regularly. Drink 1 to 2 glasses of wine per day. What? The trick to longevity is to become a wino, everybody. Belong. They all seem to belong to some faith-based community. The denomination doesn't seem to matter. Attend services 4 times per month. Up to 14 years of extra life expectancy. Like, how the heck are you measuring that? Like, what on earth? Why would you publish that without at least citing the sources? Like, where's my hyperlink for a source for that? Loved ones first. Keep your parents or grandparents nearby. Commit to a life partner. Invest in your children. Right tribe. They have social circles that support healthy behaviors. Social networks of long-lived people have favorably shaped their health behaviors. Okay, like on the surface, all of these sound like really good ideas, and I feel like none of these would be bad to do. But I feel like there's got to be more to the story than this, because, yeah, let's keep reading. Okay, so these are the blue zones. Sardinia, the first one. It's a community of shepherds. They walk mountains all day. They have a classic Sardinian diet, plant-based, consisting moderate wine consumption may help explain the lower levels of stress among men. The alcohol will do that to you. Okinawa, this is the world's longest lived women. So the tradition of forming moai provides secure social networks. At the age of 5, children are put into these committed social networks. One specific moai that Dan discovered has been together for 97 years. The average age of the group is 102. They meet every day for sake and gossip. Can I just look up these moai really fast? Like, what the heck? Moai. Did I spell it right? These are the giant heads. Moai, Japan. Let's see. I don't want to know what the blue zones have to say about it. The Japanese way to build relationships. I'm seeing a lot of articles that are written by people who it doesn't seem like they're Japanese. I would love to hear a Japanese person's take on this. Because there's always downsides to these kinds of things. Or they're always like glorified or romanticized. I'm probably not going to find anything. I'll keep looking over here. Loma Linda, California. This community outlives the average American by a decade. Take their diet from the Bible. Leafy greens, nuts, and legumes. Recognize the Sabbath and downshift for 24 hours every day. Why are you saying downshift like it's a scientific term? Who put this paper in a public? This is like an article in a newspaper. Why is this in a scientific journal? Many of the Adventists are still active until their late 90s. This guy was told the contractor wanted this much to build a fence, and instead of paying the contractor, he did it himself. And after 3 days of work, he ended up in the hospital. Oh, but he's not on the table. He's performing surgery, open heart surgery. This woman woke up every morning when she was 105, read her Bible, ride her stationary bike for 30 minutes, and then get in her car and drive to one of her 7 volunteer jobs. Okay, I don't want to call out people for cherry picking, but cherry pickers! Nicoya. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe everything's on the level. Nicoyans spend just 15% of what Americans spend on healthcare and are more than twice as likely than Americans to reach a healthy age of 90 years. Faith and family play a strong role. They maintain a positive outlook, active lifestyles. They eat little to no processed foods, plenty of antioxidant-rich tropical foods. Icaria. They live 8 years longer than Americans do, 20% less cancer, half the rate of heart disease, almost no dementia. They live on the Mediterranean diet, all show downshift with a mid-afternoon break and to take a nap. This guy was diagnosed with lung cancer and wanted to move back to Icaria to live with his parents. Long story short, 37 years later, he's got a vineyard. He said, I just forgot to die. Some medical stuff. Obesity and diabetes, blah, blah, blah. Life radius. Apparently, individuals spend about 90% of their lives within 5 miles of their home, known as their life radius. Individuals can engineer their kitchen so they eat about 100 fewer calories and engineer their home so they burn a couple hundred extra calories through physical activity. Are you seriously suggesting that a couple hundred calories is going to make a difference? Put a bowl of fruit on the counter. Serve food at the stove and not on the table. Use hand tools for yard work. So he's advocating putting all of these little evidence-based design tweaks in place to the community so when people show up to school, work, church, they aren't mindlessly nudged to eat less and move more. Or they are mindlessly nudged to eat less and move more. Things like standing desks, taking vending machines out, no bread baskets at restaurants, safe walking paths. The best investment on health is through policy. Creating an environment where fruits and vegetables are more accessible over fast food. Dramatic decrease in obesity is seen in these places. If there are 6 or more fast food restaurants within a half a mile of an individual's home, they are 40% more likely to be obese than if there are less than 3. If streets are walkable and bikeable, parks are cleaned up, and the active option is the easy option, physical activity of the entire population can rise by 30%. Okay, I don't know why I'm so skeptical, but all of this sounds like absolute garbage. Maybe they have some sources that I'm not. I mean, there's no sources cited right here. Maybe they have the references at the end. But they're throwing out a lot of stats that seem like they would be very difficult to measure. Also, does this not 40% more likely to be obese if there's fast food restaurants? Does this not also like a huge socioeconomic component to this statistic? Poor people eat more fast food. Is that not like a well-established fact? Am I crazy? Albert Lea. Who's Albert Lea? Oh, Albert Lee's a town of 9,000 people. It's going to be the first city in the pilot project. The city wanted to widen Main Street and up the speed limit, but the Blue Zones convinced them to build a walking path around their lake instead. The path is now packed 11 months out of the year. Sidewalks were connected so people could walk their homes to downtown without having to walk through field or busy intersections. Okay, I'm definitely not knocking walkable cities and sidewalks and putting in walking paths. I think those are great. I just think that's like a very small part of the thing. And they're making it sound like this is like making a huge difference. In this small town, grocery stores and restaurants pledges were created to help individuals change the way they eat. Restaurants were required to offer 3 plant-based entrees. When a sandwich was ordered, the customer automatically got fruit instead of fries. By using different adjectives rather than the healthy choice, people were more likely to choose the best option. Grocery stores had healthy checkout aisles, candy bars and soda were replaced with fruit and water and healthy snacks. Schools in the city didn't sell candy for fundraisers. There was no candy for good grades. They prohibited eating in hallways and classrooms. An 11% per year drop in student body mass index. After about a year and a half, there was a 3.2-year bump in life expectancy. The community lost a combined weight of 7,000 pounds, and healthcare costs dropped by 40%. How the heck are you measuring this? What on earth? Like, what the heck? How do you measure someone's life expectancy by such a small margin? 3 years. Only after a year and a half. Like, what? I'm so confused. After seeing the results in the small town, they began taking on larger cities. They went to the beach cities of LA, worked with city planners to make the streets built for humans instead of cars. Smoking rate went down. BMI went down. From there, they moved to Iowa. 10 cities were chosen. Healthy eating went up by 10.5%. There are now 27 cities across the U.S. I feel like this is a great idea. Encourage people to be healthy. But I also feel like this is a lot of numbers you're throwing out. I feel like historically these kinds of metrics have been exceptionally difficult to measure, and you're just throwing out numbers like you've measured them. Vitality Compass, the best online tool for retirement and longevity. Users answer lifestyle and background questions based on the Power 9, calculates their biological age, overall life expectancy, healthy life expectancy, and years they are gaining or losing because of their habits. And then it gives customized recommendations to help them live longer. In summary, the goal for Blue Zones is not only to make the healthy choice the easy choice, but also the unavoidable choice. Four references? There's only 4 references cited here. The Danish twin pairs, the spread of obesity in large social networks, 9 lessons. This one was written by the guy. 9 lessons for living longer. This is just another article on the Blue Zones. This is also just another article on the Blue Zones. Let me just see if we can do some quick examination of these claims to see if we can get anything. Loma Linda. Let's see if we can look at Loma Linda population statistics and see if there are people that live to be older there or what. Loma Linda statistics. Data USA. Citizenship. Race and ethnicity. Veterans, employment, industries, education, health. I have no idea what this graph means. Okay, this is probably a bad idea. I'm not going to be able to understand this. Let's maybe just jump in straight into the Blue Zones being debunked. Debunked. The science behind Blue Zones. Oh wait, this is his response to the critics. Let's come back to this. I would like to hear what he has to say, but I want to hear what the other people have to say first. Al Jazeera. Where people reach 100. Fake data, says academic. Let's see what we got here. Saul Newman is the guy. He thinks that the Blue Zones are just a byproduct of bad data. He has spent years debunking their research about extremely elderly populations. He says that the apparent longevity of these people can be explained by pension fraud, clerical errors, and lack of reliable birth and death records. Oh no. So this guy analyzed reams of demographic data, including mortality statistics, for 236 jurisdictions gathered between 1970 and 2021. Some of the places reported to have the most centenarians included Kenya, Malawi, and the self-governing territory of Western Sahara. Jurisdictions with overall life expectancies of just 64, 65, and 71. Wait, what? Oh, he's saying there's other places in the world that have the most centenarians, and somehow the life expectancy of these centenarian places are mid-60s. Similar patterns crop up in Western countries, with the London borough of Tower Hamlets, one of the most deprived areas of the UK, reported to have more people over the age of 105 than anywhere else in the country. He tracked down 80% of the people in the world who are over 110 and found where they had been born, when they died, and analyzed the patterns. According to his research, the more old age poverty means you get more 110-year-olds. These clerical errors have been compounded over the decades, undermining their reliability of statistics. Governments have acknowledged serious flaws in their record keeping. In 2010, the Japanese government announced that 82% of its citizens reported to be over 100 had already died. 82%, that's a lot. In 2012, Greece announced that it had discovered that 72% of its centenarians claiming pension, some 9,000 people, were already dead. Puerto Rican's government said that it would replace all existing birth certificates due to concerns about widespread fraud and identity theft. Okinawans have some of the worst health indicators in Japan, according to Japanese government's annual National Health and Nutritional Survey. While the traditional Okinawan diet is seen as healthy, 2020 study found that the island has a higher prevalence of obesity and higher rates of mortality among those aged 40 to 65 than mainland Japan. Newman believes that this is the result of many deaths going unregistered. Newman said his research has not won him any friends in academia, though he has been gratified with the support he received from colleagues at Oxford. Much of his work has received little or no notice from his fellow academics, and the study he recently submitted for publication was subjected to 9 peer reviews instead of the usual 2 or 3. He did receive a little recognition and was awarded the first ever Ig Nobel Prize in demography. Ig Nobel Prize is achievements that make people laugh and then think. Newman says he doesn't fault people for resorting to things like pension fraud. He says he likes doing it because the people are being left behind by their governments in these places. And they're not given a sufficient pension, and they're not given a sufficient retirement net. The fact that they're just saying, well, I'll just keep collecting Barry's pension from down the road is an indicator of the difficult pressures these people are under. Yeah, agreed. Okay, so this guy's also making a lot of claims, so we should probably investigate him rather than just taking him for his word, right? So let's look into this guy and the things that he is saying. Saul Newman is the one we want. Saul Newman, Blue Zones. Blue Zones. Let's try this one. Dr. Newman has uncovered the secret to living. This is just an article. No, does he have any kind of like publication? I don't see anything published. Let's try publication. BioRxiv. Let's try this one. All right. Supercentenarian and remarkable age records exhibit patterns indicative of clerical errors and pension fraud by Saul Newman. Okay, this looks like it should be the right one. Informative. This observation of people getting old in blue zones has generated considerable scientific interest. The things people think: high vegetable intake, strong social connections, genetic markers. We reveal new predictors of remarkable longevity and supercentenarian status. In the U.S., predictors are the absence of vital registration. State-specific introduction of birth certificates is associated with a 69 to 82% fall in the number of supercentenarian records. In Italy, England, and France, they have better vital registration. Remarkable longevity is instead predicted by poverty, low per capita incomes, shorter life expectancy, higher crime rates, worse health, higher deprivation, fewer 90-plus-year-olds, and residents in remote overseas and colonial territories. In England and France, higher old age poverty rates alone predict more than half of the regional variation in attaining a remarkable age. Who knew all you had to do was be poor to live a long life? Only 18% of exhaustively validated supercentenarians have a birth certificate, falling to 0% in the U.S. Supercentenarian birth dates are concentrated on days divisible by 5, which indicates widespread fraud and error. Finally, the designated blue zones of the Sardinia, Okinawa, and Ikaria correspond to regions with low income, low literacy, high crime rate, and short life expectancy relative to their national average. As such, relative poverty and short lifespan constitute unexpected predictors of supercentenarian, support a primary role of fraud and error in generating remarkable human age records. Where's the rest of it? All right, maybe I'm pretty biased. I feel like I might be pretty biased, but this is already making me feel like this guy has done more work, just because he's citing things that are much easier to, or he's looking at like a lot of different statistics about like the overall health of the people and not just being like, this is what they eat. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Oh, here we go. Full text. Introduction. Oh, look at all these links. Hyperlink. So many hyperlinks. I love it. This looks like he's citing sources for the other people. Like these are the sources that they have used. There is a theoretical reason to expect that most or all old age records are errors. Well, that's the statement. Consider, for example, a population of 50-year-olds into which we introduce a vanishingly low rate of random undetectable age coding errors. These rare errors involve taking a 40-year-old and making their documents state that they are now 50 years old. The 40-year-old young liar errors will have over double the annual survival rate of the error-free 50-year-old populations. Why? Because 50-year-olds die more? Is that what he's saying? Young liar errors are more likely to survive than error-free data. Age coding errors constitute an exponentially larger fraction of the population over time. Eventually, this exponential growth overtakes the population, and even from a vanishingly low baseline error rates of, say, 0.001%, the entire population becomes young liar errors at advanced ages. Of course, the baseline error rate in most populations is not vanishingly low. The USA, which has more supercentenarian records than any other country, exhibits historical error rates at 17 to 66%, even in the general population. What the heck? Where did he get that from? Comparison of information on death certificates and matching 1960 census records, or mortality measurement at advanced ages. Social Security Administration death master file. Wow, okay. I would love to look into these, but there's way too many to look into, and I don't have that much time. But at least he's citing sources, right? Here we explore the possibility that old age data are dominated by age coding errors, linking civil registration rates and indicators of poverty per capita obtained from databases. This data reveals that remarkable age attainment is predicted by errors and fraud, including the things he's mentioned before, raise serious questions about the validity of an extensive body of research. These concerns were sufficiently serious that an extensive review was conducted, which brings into question key findings, widespread research practices, and the basic level of integrity in the field. Yikes, no wonder this is not a popular paper. He's calling into question the whole field. He's calling you out, demographers. Okay, methods. So it looks like the number and birthplace of all of the supercentenarians was downloaded from this place, research group, aggregated by subnational units for birth locations, provided by the IDL data. Populations were excluded due to incomplete subnational birthplace records. Population data on SSC and these guys in the USA, France, and England. Here he gives a figure. Let's look at it for a second. Is there a way to zoom in? Supercentenarians per capita. Okay, I'm not understanding this. Is this saying that there are 2.5 to 6? Wait, 2.5 to 6 in the light yellow zones? 1.25 to 5 in the dark red? I'm not understanding this graph. Okay, so he's basically just saying where he got all the information. For Italy, he downloaded them from this database. The Italian Institute. For the Japanese, were downloaded from Japanese Ministry of Health and Labor and Welfare. So he's getting all the data he's getting from the countries are from the nationally published, from the actual governments in countries, like their published data. Sounds like French came from GRG database in France. Okay, he's like very detailed, and it's kind of going over my head. I don't know if he has like a weird way of writing, but it's kind of hard to read this. Maybe I'm just not well versed enough in demography speak. Okay, let's just jump into the results. Between the 1880s and 1900s, 79% of supercentenarian births. The U.S. population increased by 150%. Wow. And average life expectancy by 20%. The introduction of complete vital registration in the U.S. coincided with this rapid increase in lifespan and population size, and were expected to result in large increase in the number of supercentenarian records. Instead, the introduction of statewide birth certification coincides with a sharp reduction in the number of supercentenarians. In total, 82% of supercentenarian records from the USA predate statewide birth certification. Was he saying like on record they predate certification? When states transition to statewide birth registration, the number of supercentenarians falls by 80% per year. Interesting. Here's another data point plot graph, whatever you call it. That's frustrating. Why do they put the blurb at the bottom? I can't see. How do you get rid of this blurb? The introduction of birth certificates in Italy largely predates the onset of supercentenarian records. Instead, the attainment of remarkable age in Italy is predicted by short average lifespan. Within Italian cohorts, life expectancy at age 55 is positively correlated with life expectancy at all ages, from 60 to 95. However, better early and midlife survival is predictive of worse mortality rates after age 95. Yikes, I'm having trouble wrapping my brain around this. But it sounds like what he's saying is that if you have better chances, statistically better chances of survival when you're like mid-aged, 50 to 90, then you're more likely to die after that. So living a healthy life or living like a good life in the medieval years means that you're not going to live to be over 100, is what it sounds like he's saying. Findings from the Italian data support the hypothesis that centenarians largely constitute a collection of errors and pension fraud. The province had the second lowest employment rate of all Italian provinces and the single lowest GDP per capita. Individuals born in Medio Campidano were the second least likely to survive from birth age to age 55. I think he's just wording this confusingly. Second least likely. So they were second from the bottom, least likely to survive from birth to age 55. These areas right here, Corsica and metropolitan France, are regions that historically constitute some of the most neglected, least well-documented, and shortest-lived administrative regions in France. Once these data are included, at a minimum, the overseas and former colonial regions of France contain 24 of a total 155 supercentenarians. Wow, okay, 15%. Not a good percentage ratio. I'm going to keep moving. See if he has something that's a little more contained. All these numbers are throwing me. Here's another plot graph figure. He talks about birthdays here, days of the month. The days that people are born on are nearly uniformly distributed throughout the year, with minimal deviation from random sampling. Birthdays generally vary by less than 2% across different days of the month. In contrast, supercentenarians in GRG databases are 1.4 more likely to be born on the first day of the month, and 1.2-fold as likely to be born on a day that is divisible by 5. This pattern may be explained by people who have non-randomly chosen or manufactured birthdays. In addition, all Japanese records are absent. Most of the signal for over-enrichment arises in Japan and U.S. birthdays, with Japanese supercentenarians 2.7 times more likely and U.S. 1.5 times more likely to be born on the first day of the month. The omission of certain dates and records from the IDL data, for reasons that are unclear, masks the age heaping apparent in the US and Japan. Okay, discussion. Maybe there'll be less numbers in the discussion. Alright, like you said before, basic economic and social indicators predict the distribution of extreme age records. The direction of these interactions is the opposite of rational expectations. Diverse social and economic indicators that normally predict worse health outcomes, such as income deprivation, poverty, high unemployment, are all positively associated with a higher probability of reaching an extreme age. These factors are linked to a lower probability of survival and worse health outcomes at every age below 90, for every population included in the study. However, these anti-health factors, poverty, crime, and whatnot, are consistently positive association with extreme longevity. Even poor health itself is positively associated with attaining a remarkable lifespan. During validation, the intensive search for vital registration documents and removal of unsupported cases should have enriched this death certification rate above the 95% baseline. It is therefore unclear why only 8% of all records of SSC records and 1.4% of all U.S. records have a death certificate, unless these data are mostly errors. Similar pattern holds for birth certificates. Even an intensive search could not exceed 15% coverage. Claims to remarkable regional longevity are often contraindicated by substantial but curiously uncited studies. The Center for Disease Control generated an independent estimate of average longevity across the U.S. They found that Loma Linda, a blue zone supposedly characterized by remarkable lifespan, instead has an unremarkable average lifespan. They are 27th to the 75th percentile. European blue zones also enjoy independent estimates. According to the collective governments of the European Union, the Sardinian and Icarian blue zones occupy regions that are 36th to 44th and 56th to 65th in the EU for old age, which old age is 85 plus. It's possible to explain away these anomalies to lifestyle factors. However, these findings should be considered in the context of other diverse and incongruous patterns observed in extreme old age studies. So the problems of extreme age research should be focused into two critical points. The first is observational. Extremely high-frequency errors are not impossible, improbable, or hypothetical. They have been routinely discovered after long evading the notice of demographers, often in the most intensively studied populations in the world. How are they? So he's kind of calling demographers out pretty hard here. How have they missed all of these things? Any statement that such error rates could not happen, for example, due to the vigilance of or rigor of demographic validation, are therefore belied by historical fact. In the U.S., for example, 27% of white males and 66% of non-white females had multiple official ages in 1960, with 8 to 30% misreported by more than a decade. Wow. At least 54% of U.S. centenarians were revealed as errors in 1979, and over half of all descendant African Americans had multiple official ages. There's errors everywhere, apparently. Substantial error rates were recently uncovered in every blue zone. In 1997, 30,000 Italian citizens were discovered to be claiming their pensions whilst dead. In 2008, 42% of Costa Ricans, 99 plus years old, were revealed to have misstated their age. The Nicoya blue zone shrunk by around 90%, and old age life expectancy plummeted from the world leading to near bottom of the pack after limited error correction. In 2010, over 230,000 Japanese centenarians were discovered to be missing imaginary clerical errors or dead. They had an error rate of 82%. So this is what I mean by confusing sentences. He said an error rate of 82% in data then considered among the best in the world. Is he saying that the Japan? Is he saying that Japanese data was then considered to be the best in the world? Or is he saying that the error rate of 82% was the Most egregious? It's a confusing sentence. Maybe I'm crazy, but it's a little bit hard to understand exactly what he's saying. Greece followed in 2012. Only 2 of these cases were discovered, but all were seemingly generally ignored by professional demographers. Nobody noticed their non-existence in the newspaper, and it wasn't even mentioned or cited in demographic literature. He makes the comparison that if the same thing were to happen in something like astronomy or the biobank things, there would be a major scandal. But for some reason, nobody cares when it's demographics that they're citing or studying. It seems worth asking, he thinks, to ask why the recurrent discovery of high rates of age errors has been ignored by the scientific community. He seems to think that the typical response, most of the time when things are found out to be not correct, is to instead call for better validation and closer examination of the documents, which raises the second critical point that the examination of documents cannot detect routine errors. And then he goes on to justify that claim with this story. So there was this investigation in France? I'm not sure. Where 421 claimed centenarians, only 82 passed documentary validation, and then after that, only 9 passed subsequent investigation, including this guy, the world's oldest man. People kept scrutinizing this case for over a century, and it was continually included in world records before it was found that he had died at 65, and it was written on his death certificate the entire time, which is kind of crazy because there's first it was examined here, and then it was examined here, and then they kept looking at it over the course of a century. I mean, that's a pretty big slip. If this is true, that's a pretty big slip up. He's got citations here. Okay, he's got a story to help us understand this problem. Consider a room containing 100 real Italian centenarians. Everybody's holding valid documents. One random person then exchanges his documents for a younger sibling who has handed their siblings real and valid birth documents. So if you're looking at all 100 cases, how could you find the one case that was messed up? Type 1 substitution, using only documents as evidence. Or how could you measure the frequency of such errors and discriminate whether 1, 10, or 100 Italian siblings are in the room? They each hold valid and consistent documents. He's just trying to make the case that documents provide no guarantee of accuracy. And this is a long article, long paper. Okay, statements and declarations, competing interests, ethics, more graphs, charts. So many charts. They look lovely. I have no idea what any of them mean. Indicators of systemic cultural problems and extreme age. There's been a number of high-profile, uncorrected issues that suggest deep-seated problems in the research culture. There's some striking and unchallenged explanations that push outright scientific racism. For example, extreme age records of these places are a positive outcome of the African slave trade's selection of the strongest individuals through the tremendous health selection effect of slavery. Yikes. Such explanations make no historical or biological sense. Yeah. This view is unfortunately not an anomaly, but a continuation of openly propagated racism and extreme age demography, a general argument that late-life mortality crossovers develop when weaker individuals are selected out at a young age. The indications of problematic research can be evidenced at all scales, broad population patterns, population studies, individual case evaluations, and even basic logical evaluations of data and evidence. Man, he's calling them out so hard. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten strung up or something, or taken to court for slander. He starts talking about the blue zones here. Here he starts talking about Okinawa. In Okinawa, the central claim of remarkable survivability to extreme ages was established in 2004, before 82% of Japanese records were debunked. According to the Statistics Bureau of Japan, Okinawa also has the highest murder rate per capita, the worst over 65 dependency ratio, second lowest median income, highest percentage of older people on welfare, and the highest unemployment rate of all 47 Japanese prefectures. Despite prior claims of dietary benefits based on high vegetable, oily fish, and sweet potato consumption, Okinawa has the lowest per capita intake of sweet potatoes. What? Fruits, vegetables, seafood, all these foods, oilies, fish such as sardine and yellow, all this stuff. Okinawa also has the second highest per capita intake of beer and the highest per capita intake of KFC. The highest child poverty rate at 36%, the most flop houses and shotgun weddings, and according to the USDA, Okinawan residents each consume an average of 14 cans of Spam per year. Second lowest minimum wage. Wow, okay, so he's calling them out. Basically all of the stats they cite about Okinawa are just dead wrong, it seems like. So these do not represent a sudden shift away. They've been this way for a long time. I wonder if he's going to address at all in this paper, like the diet or lifestyle things. I mean, he's calling them out on all their data, which is fine. But I feel like the things that they were saying about like diet, exercise, purpose, all this stuff sounds good. It seems like it would be healthy, right? So I'm wondering if he's going to call them out on that at all, or even mention it. If nothing else, these surveys reveal both astounding attention to detail by the Japanese government, which, like, yeah, if they have statistics on all of that stuff, that's some pretty good legwork on their part, and the scale of data that has been overlooked by Blue Zone researchers. Yes, also, yes. Over 65 Okinawans have the fourth highest suicide rate in Japan. Older Okinawans do not grow gardens. They self-report the lowest rate of gardening in the country, beating only the apartment-dominated Tokyo and Osaka megacities. They don't belong to faith-based communities. They are 93.4% atheists, the most irreligious population in Japan. They've even used Fountain of Youth repackaged as modern wellness for profit. Oh man, and he goes on. There's still more. Jeez Louise. The two remaining blue zones, these ones are considered exceptional due to their high average longevity rather than the presence of the oldest old. Okay, I think we get the point. Let me see if he has like a summary or something, because he's made his point a bunch of times over. Indicators of error and fraud in individual cases. Hold on, let's see. The world's oldest man, now widely considered to be a valid supercentenarian case. Evidence used primary source material collection, vetted by biological relatives. It's now known he has had at least 3 wedding dates to the same wife, was conscripted to the same military 3 times in 4 years, and despite the mandatory conscription period being 3 years long, has 3 dates of graduation from the same school, and has at least 3 birthdays. For the first 20 years of his life, all of his birthdays and school records are actually those of a different person, a name whose connection to Kimura is not attested by any official document, but by an unofficial handwritten note from a Korean mail and telephone company. Kimura explained one of his extra birthdays in a way that was not feasible. This guy concluded that his birth date had been deliberately forged, or that one unexplainable birth date. Well, okay, so after all of that, they gave him a new birthday, and his brother also a new birthday, and these undetected errors or uncorrected errors didn't do anything. They concluded that no critical discordances were discovered, and the case is still considered valid. Wow. So that's like, okay, so either that's like some extremely intentional misrepresenting of the data, or this guy is not giving us the full story, or maybe he's just being too harsh and too critical of the demographers. I don't know, because that's like pretty egregious. Summary, finally. All right, he's basically just saying the same thing he said before, and that's the end. Bibliographies. How many does he have cited? Let's see. 66 there, 11 here, altogether 78. Dang, okay, that's a lot. Whew, that was a lot of data. Okay, let's go and see if we can look at their response, his response to the critics. The critic, singular, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's more than one. All right, Dan Buettner, tell us what your response is. We are writing to object to a recent academically misleading and deeply flawed preprint paper authored by a critic with no academic training or expertise in demography, and has no record of publication in these fields of study. I mean, what the heck does that have to do with anything? This paper remains unpublished in any peer-reviewed scientific journals, despite having been submitted for publication over 4 years ago. Below, we have provided links to our peer-reviewed papers, which thoroughly detail how we have confirmed the ages of each blue zone, along with statistical methodology used to validate. Let's see how many sources he has this time. I think these are just the names of people. This is just the links to the experts, which is fine. Oh, here we go, references. Okay, so there's 19 this time. Better. They really are that old. A validation study of centenarian prevalence in Okinawa. Individual life duration and the growth of the oldest old population. The social gradient and life expectancy. The contrary case of Okinawa. Okay, so they also have some sources, which, I mean, if he's correct when he was calling them out, they might be just dead wrong citing those sources. But, I mean, I haven't read the study, so I don't know. What are the blue zones? Are you going to restate it, really, in your response paper? They have been fully validated by strict demographic criteria and 4 locations. The critics' unreviewed preprints omit or misunderstand the rigorous age verification and statistical analysis involved. The procedure is highly accurate, and these are the ways that it's highly accurate. Identify potentially high longevity targets using public demographic databases which have low error rates. I mean, according to all of the country's own governments and like the public data they put out, I'm pretty sure they all cited that the error rates were not low. Accurately counting the number of people born in the target area, identifying individuals who have reached a preset threshold age of 90 years regardless of residence. Subsequently, the ratio of long livers to total births. The process is designed to minimize the likelihood of false positives, type 1 errors, and ensure accurate identification of blue zones. I think type 1 errors were like if the documents are valid and they are given to a different person or something. In Sardinia, for example, we double-checked every centenarian in the blue zone villages using civil status databases, handwritten records, a complete genealogical reconstruction of village inhabitants. Not only were the birth and death dates of each centenarian confirmed, but those of their siblings were also cross-checked. This allowed us to rule out any possible identity switches. Oh, such as the case of this false one that they found. I don't know why I'm taking the other guy so much more at his word. It just sounds like, this sounds very petty, and the other one sounded very scientific. I feel like I have a huge bias, though. I'm not going to lie. I feel like I'm very biased. The Critic's papers have been promoted in mainstream media. What the heck? So the Critic argues that it's due to poor demographic records, and they admit, which is often the case. However, that he ignores the fact that this criticism does not apply to the blue zones. Why would it not apply to the blue zones, where ages have been rigorously validated with modern, accurate demographic methodology? He claims blue zone birth records also exhibit age heaping patterns. They don't think those patterns appear in the datasets. His examples of fraudulent death registrations in Japan and US have no bearing on the blue zones. We have meticulously validated all ages before analysis. So are they trying to say that for some reason Okinawa was like separate from those 230,000 fraudulent death cases? However, as we have publicly acknowledged, the growth in life expectancy in Okinawa has slowed, particularly in comparisons to other prefectures in Japan. There are various factors contributing. Social gradient involving high illiteracy, poverty, and crime is not among them. Japan is well known for having one of the lowest crime rates in the world. Is that true? Does Japan... Vox, Japan has an exceptionally low crime rate, but there's a dark side to its justice system. Japan's low crime rate are some very troubling criminal justice practices. Suspects will falsely admit guilt just to end a stressful interrogation. Police and prosecutors may hold ordinary criminal suspects for up to 23 days without charge. Japan's criminal justice system is built to rely largely on confessions. The lack of safeguards for suspects means the system often relies on false confessions. Will that lower the crime rate? Anyways, not the topic. Critics' use of Sardinia-wide crime and poverty statistics to generalize about blue zones is also misleading. Sardinian Blue Zone is a small rural area of about 50,000 people spread across 6 mountain villages, whereas Sardinia as a whole has a population of 1.6 million. Conclusion. The ages of individuals in the officially recognized blue zones have been thoroughly validated, and their longevity is well documented. The critics' unreviewed papers are both ethically and academically irresponsible. Their promotion in mainstream media is an insult. Sincerely, all of these guys. Well, I don't know what to... I feel like the blue zone people had a response, and it wasn't a very good one. But, I don't know, I am curious. The guy never did talk about, like, health or, like, food intake or like signs of wellness. He's like, I guess, which that kind of wasn't the point. He's just calling them out for poor data gathering and doing poor science, I guess. So does it call into question like the validity of the lifestyle habits and like social aspects? I don't know. I feel like those all sounded pretty valid to me. Will they make you live to 100? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe. I guess you're just going to have to try it and find out. I think that's it for this video. Thanks for hanging out. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.